Hello everyone. So the next topic which we will be discussing is about the disorders of the circulatory system. So first we will understand what is circulatory system. So circulatory system can be defined as a system which is involved in the circulation of lymph and blood throughout the body. So the circulatory system consists of many parts. And what are the parts? It can be blood, it can be lymphatic vessels, lymph, and various glands. So now the disorders of the circulatory system. So let's start with the first slide, that what is a disorder. So disorder is defined as a state of irregular functioning of the body. So it's not talking about the circulatory system, it's talking about in general that what is disorder. It is the state of dysfunctioning or irregular functioning of the body. Now, the disorders of the circulatory system could be defined as an ailment which affects the major parts of the circulatory system. Now, what are the major parts of the circulatory system? It will include the heart, the blood vessels, the blood cells. There are three types of blood cells, that is RBCs, WBCs, and platelets. And blood vessels, which can be the arteries and veins. So it can be arteries and veins and capillaries. So these are the blood vessels. So any disorder or any ailment which affects these organs of the circulatory system, that will lead to the disorder. So this disorder will lead to the insufficient or reduced transportation of the blood, oxygen, hormones and nutrients to the tissues and the cell. So example, if I want to say the examples of the circulatory system or the disorder of the circulatory system, then it will include many disorders, but we are majorly focusing on the high blood pressure, coronary artery diseases, heart failure, and angina. So these are the four disorders which I will be focusing upon. Now, the factors that affect the circulatory system or the disorders of the circulatory system. It includes an emotional response to distressing events like an accident. So it would be an emotional response or distressing event that may lead to the disorder of the circulatory system. It may lead to heart attack or something. Then blockage of the blood vessels. So blockage of the blood vessels can also lead to heart attack. Then formation of tumors in the blood vessels. So when there is a formation of tumors in the blood vessels, the blood will not be able to flow throughout the body. So it may lead to some kind of disorder. And the last is the reduction in the artery diameter. So when there is a reduction in the artery diameter, it can also lead to some kind of disorder of the circulatory system. Now, the first disorder which I will be discussing is about the high blood pressure. So blood pressure or high blood pressure, it's the pressure which is created by the blood flow on the walls of the blood vessels, that is known as the blood pressure. So if I talk about the normal range of blood pressure, then it is about 122 by 80 mmHg. And in this range, we have two things, that is the diastolic and the systolic. In 120, it is the systolic blood pressure, and 80, which is, we have written like this, 120 by 80. So here 120 will be the systolic pressure and 80 will be the diastolic pressure. Now what is the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure? If I talk about the systolic blood pressure, then it is defined as the pressure that is created in the arteries. So when the blood flows through the arteries to rest of the body when the heart beats, so that is known as the systolic blood pressure. And the diastolic blood pressure, in which it is defined as the pressure that is created by the arteries when the heart relaxes between the beats. So when the heart relaxes between the beats, that is known as the diastolic blood pressure, and it is about 80 mmHg. Now, if a normal blood pressure is higher than 140 over 90, it leads to hypertension. So high blood pressure or high blood pressure is also known as the hypertension. So here we have talked about the normal blood pressure, that is just 120 by 80, and if I talk about the hypertension one, then it is about 140 by 90. So it leads to hypertension, although it do not have any signs and symptoms. So hypertension, it may lead to heart diseases and improper functioning of some organs like brain and kidneys. So it will lead to the improper functioning of these major organs, that is the brain and kidney. So high blood pressure is caused by many factors, and what are they? So these are some of the risk. But what puts you at risk for blood pressure, which means these are some of the risk factors that can affect the high blood pressure. First of all, I talk about is the age. So blood pressure tends to get higher as we get older, but it can affect many of us when we are younger too. So one of the factor is age. So as the person gets old, it may leads to high blood pressure, but it can also occur in younger ones too. Now there is a lifestyle habit which also takes place. For example, intake of salty food, yeah, intake of too much of alcohol, or intake of large amount of fat rich foods. So these eating habits can also lead to high blood pressure. So eating too much of eating too much of salt, drinking too much alcohol, being obese, smoking, and not getting enough exercise can raise our blood pressure. Next is race or ethnicity. So while anyone can have blood pressure, Africans, Americans tend to get at a younger age. So it has been proved through a data, and it was a paper which was being published here. So it states that most of the Americans and Africans, they get the higher blood pressure at a very younger age, while the other among the Hispanic adults, people at Cuban, Russian, and Domitian, the backgrounds, they are at higher risk. So they are at higher risk. Now genes also play a major role in affecting the blood pressure, high blood pressure. That is, it often runs in the family. Now, if I talk about the gender or sex in this, before age of 60 years, more men are affected as compared to women. So they have high blood pressure. And after the age of 60, it has been noted that women can have more or high blood pressure as compared to men. So as you can see, the age also plays a major role here, and the gender is also playing a major role in the high blood pressure. Next disorder is the coronary artery disease. So it is also termed as the arthrosclerosis. Now, as you can see in this particular diagram, this is a normal artery where there is no lipid deposit. The artery is looking just fine, but in this case, that is the coronary artery disease, in which there is a lipid deposit of plaque. So here all the plaque has been deposited in the artery, and it will lead to the narrowing of the artery. So it is the disease which is caused by the deposition of the waxy substances in the blood vessels and supply the blood to the heart muscle, and this deposition may often lead to heart attack. So what is this waxy thing made up of? What is this waxy substance made up of? So this waxy substance is made up of fat, cholesterol, and fibrous tissues. So this may lead to heart attack. Now, what are the factors that affect the coronary artery disease? So that can be smoking, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, or insulin resistance can also are some of the factors which cause the CAD. Next disease is angina pectoralis. So what is this condition? So in this figure, the person is holding his chest, so which means that this is a condition in which chest pain occurs if the heart receives insufficient oxygen and nutrients through the blood vessels. So when the heart does not get enough amount of oxygen or nutrients, it may lead to the chest pain, and it it could be caused by different risk factors. And what are these risk factors? It can be smoking, it can be age factor. If a person is more than age of 40, it can affect. Hypertension is also one of the main factors. Obesity and physical inactivity means not doing the exercise properly. So these are some of the factors. Now the factors, now the heart failure. So heart failure may be defined as a chronic condition when the heart does not pump sufficient blood to the tissues in the body. So it is sometimes known as the congestive heart failures, because the main symptom of the heart failure is lung congestion. So because of the lung congestion, the heart will not be able to pump the blood properly to the tissue cells or to the different parts of the body. So that is the reason the heart fails. Now, what are the factors that affect the heart failure? It can be the smoking, obesity, and intake of fat-rich diet. So these are some of the factors which leads to the heart failure. Now this is a diagrammatic representation which is showing that this is a normal heart. So normal heart is there, and right ventricle, left ventricle, septum is all being shown here. And the blood is properly flowing, and the heart is properly flowing the blood to all the parts of the body. But in case of heart failure, there is an enlarged ventricle, and the heart will not be able to pump the blood or the nutrients to the different parts of the body. So that may leads to the heart failure. So this was all about the disorders of the circulatory system. These are some of the references. Thank you.